All right, we're ready when you are,
All right,
Leslie. Oh,
I'm
there's
calling to
Kelly.
order the CCS database management meeting advisory group for Wednesday, June 17th at 10:02 a.m. And Deborah, can I get roll call?
You betcha. Kelly,
Here.
Sam,
Here.
Leslie,
Here.
Georgia,
Present. Here.
Jessica,
Here.
Kate,
Here.
Carly,
Here.
Anastasia is absent today, and then Mark.
Here.
And it looks like we also have a couple of guests. We have Deborah and Molly S. from CCS. And then I see Adrian. I'm assuming Adrian from Palatine, correct?
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 3rd, 2026 meeting, which Deborah sent out this morning. I looked over them briefly. Everything looked in order to me. I didn't know if everyone else had a chance to look at them this morning.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 3rd, 2026 meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Carly seconded. Kate motion, Carly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone who is against, say nay. All right, it looks like then the minutes are approved. The next item of business is new material request type streaming media. So I'll hand this over to Deborah.
All right, give me just 1 minute. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen there. All right, so we have received a request for a new material type from the Fremont Public Library, and the material type that's being requested is streaming device. So a bit of background on material types since it's been a while since we've discussed. Material types are a field in Polaris that are meant to encompass the physical description of an item. So material types work in conjunction with patron codes to control some Polaris behavior, specifically lending or checkout limits and hold limits. So again, material types work with those patron codes to determine how many of a specific material type that patron can check out and place on hold. Material types are also used in reporting. Specifically, we have many web reports that use that material type to provide statistics and other reports for member libraries. And the field can also be used as a filter in both Leap and the staff client. Now, material type does display in PowerPack, but BiblioCore is a little bit different. Material type does no longer display to patrons in the new catalog. So just a note that that is different between the two catalog interfaces. So Fremont has requested a separate material type for streaming device to help distinguish specifically their Rokus from their other library of things materials. Fremont, like many of our other libraries, circulates Rokus or other streaming devices that are loaded with subscriptions to popular streaming services like Disney Plus, Apple TV, and so on. Per Fremont, Roku devices are their highest circulating item, even higher than those mobile hotspots. And because of the high demand for these materials, they would like to request a separate material type to help distinguish them again from those other popular materials in their Library of Things collection. So we currently have about 23 CCS libraries that circulate Roku devices. There was a list table in your packet. We have over, I think, 400 unique Rokus circulating across the consortium. Those Rokus are currently assigned a variety of different material types depending on the library, including equipment, Steam equipment, AV equipment, e-video, other special collection. So there's really not a one-size-fits-all material type at this time that encompasses or is being used for these types of materials. So at this time, CCS recommends updating the existing film strip material type, which currently has no items attached to it. So it's sort of a free material type that we have. We recommend updating that existing material type to streaming device to accommodate this request. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for questions and or discussion.
Deborah, how many material types? Is there a limit? Because I'm remembering back to Cersei days when we had like a million. Is there a limit in Polaris on material types?
There's no There's no actual limit, I believe,
Okay.
in the software. We
Okay.
do try to keep the list
Sure. Tight.
streamlined
Yeah.
and pared down because Polaris is like a relational database. Like the more rows we add to a table, like material types, means like the number of tables and rows
Yeah.
exponentially increases. The more material types you add, it becomes more cumbersome to keep updated and correct. So we do, again, try to keep our list as tight as possible. I believe at the moment we have 74 material types. We have, since we've gone live on Polaris, we've never added a new material type. We have repurposed some material types that have become obsolete or irrelevant. Um, I think like 6 years ago, we repurposed cassette audiobook. Since there were no longer any cassette audiobooks in circulation, we repurposed that to other audiobook. And earlier this year, we repurposed the Playaway View new material type to Easy Reader. Or no,
Okay.
was that right? Read along. That's what we repurposed it
Yeah.
to. Read along.
Okay. That's helpful. I was just thinking like, in saying yes to something like this, are we then limiting? But no, it sounds like if we did choose, we could add additional ones. It isn't like a one in, one
Yes.
out
Right.
situation.
Correct.
So, okay.
I think the one in, one out has value in terms of keeping it manageable, like looking at the ones
Absolutely.
that have nothing attached to it. So
Yeah.
we're not just adding.
Right. And then leaving stuff that isn't being used.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So that actually kind of fits in with something I've been thinking about and that I emailed Deborah and Leslie about. I feel like I have no issue with having a streaming device one. It got me to thinking, though, how are we deciding? And I ask this, I feel like every time we look at material, how are we deciding whether to add something and how are we looking at it holistically? And I recognize that doing, like I had said, like it would be great if we could do a full scale, because it's been now like 8 years, um, almost nine, since we really created these with the migration to look and say, are these still serving our needs? Are there things that are shifting trend-wise? I recognize that that would be a project, a pretty big project, especially when we have things like adorable little people coming into the world. Not that I think that this would be like a Molly project, but like again, right, that there's things happening in CCS. I'm just very excited. Um, and so I guess I would ask if we could consider for the future reviewing this holistically to say what makes sense. Because like we don't have, and I know we voted no on this, like the 4K Blu-ray, that is one that is an especially hard pain point at Northbrook. Our patrons are constantly, and it's hard for staff to find stuff. And so that would be one. And so like looking at, I think more largely on the trends and what that looks like, it would be great if that would be something we could add to the project list down the road for this committee to look at more in depth.
I think that's a reasonable ask, Kate. And I know I replied to you via email, but I'll share
Yeah.
what I replied with the group that I think that at this time the material types are meeting the needs of our members because we've received very few requests for new material types over the years, which, without feedback that they're not working, I'm going to make an assumption that for the most part, what we have, our current list is meeting our member library's needs. But I definitely do see the value knowing we've been on Polaris. We're reaching a decade almost for
I
being on
mean, right?
Polaris.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, I don't even want to think about that.
Right?
But I do see the value, maybe not in this next fiscal year because of our existing project load, but for this group at some point in the near future to review all of our current Polaris values, um, to ensure, again, that they continue to meet our needs moving forward.
Yeah. And I do think that like CCS does such a good job in helping all of us maintain a clean database. And we haven't seen the like continual add-ons that I think we used to see happening in Cersei that then broke stuff with upgrades. And I view this as just like a higher level cleanup in addition to all of the regular stuff that the member libraries and CCS are doing all the time. So this isn't to say that I think anything is broken. I don't think it's broken. I just think it's good to kind of like write clean house every so often.
Does anyone have any other comments on the specific item type? I'm sorry, material type, or Kate's comments about overall this is a future project of this committee, which many of us might not be here to undertake, so we can add this for future people.
Yeah, I just had a comment. I was looking at the release schedule for Polaris, and in the next upgrade, there will be a 4K material type, and there will also be the ability to do custom toms. So I was just wondering how CCS is planning on navigating that. Will it be easier to have custom toms?
Yeah, so that's a good sneak preview of what something the committee will probably be reviewing next year. So as Carly mentioned, with the next release of Polaris 8.1, we'll gain the ability to add custom toms, which is the bib level format in Polaris. So that could be a fix for things like 4K Blu-rays, where if we create a new custom TOM, it may reduce the need for like a new material type for that format. The tricky thing is, and again, this is a pure preview and what the group will probably discuss in the next fiscal year, is that Bibliocore does not display the Polaris TOM. So while we can add custom TOMs in the future, those won't display in Bibliocore, which uses a separate set of formats. So I think that brings a lot of discussion for the group in the future of, why might we need a TOM? Which ones would be beneficial for staff use, knowing that they won't display to patrons. So preview, Carly, of what is to come in the next fiscal year before our upgrade to 8.1. Did that answer your question, Carly? Yeah, okay.
Anyone else have any input, feedback?
I mean,
Do we?
clearly this is an optional thing. Like our one kit does not need to. Normally material types have been, you can use them kind of however you want, right?
Right. So libraries can individually decide how they want to assign material types to items. So if a library wanted to use this new material type, they could. If they wanted to continue using their existing material type for their streaming devices, they could also choose not to use it.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly see no problem, and I mean, clearly it would be of great amount of use to Fremont with 78 items of this type to be able to distinguish those. But yeah, I don't think it probably is easier for us to keep our one kit where it is, but
anyone else? Questions, concerns? Otherwise, is there a motion someone is willing to put on the table?
I'll make a motion to approve this, the change of the film strip material type to streaming device.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sam seconds.
Sam.
All right. Do we need a roll call vote for this one or?
I'll go ahead and do a roll
Okay.
call vote. So I will start with Mark.
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Georgia,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Kate,
No, but no prejudice, just making a statement so that we can look at this again in the future.
there. Carly,
Yes.
and Anastasia. Okay, perfect. So motion carries. So CCS will go ahead and make the update to the label of the film strip material type and change it to streaming device. So we should be able to get that change in essentially immediately in time for this week's CCS news.
And then the committee, we feel like we want to direct Deborah to work with CCS to get this on a future committee's agenda when there's time for CCS to take this on as a project? Does that feel like a good direction to provide CCS?
Yes, and I feel like it would fall under modeling operational excellence in the strategic plan if we wanted to look at that for year 3 or 4.
We're already 2 years. Gosh, we're already in our second year of our streak. That's crazy. So yes, thank you all. I think that's a great feedback. We can look into slotting this into one of the remaining years in our current strategic plan, as Kate noted, to model operational excellence.
All right, thank you. So the next item then is literary form and target audience requirements.
Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So give me 1 minute to pop my PowerPoint back up. Okay. All right. So during a little bit of background information on this agenda item. So during our migration to Polaris back in 2018, this group, Database Management, voted on cataloging standardizations for 2 of the MARC fields that control facet display in PowerPack. So that would be the target audience facet and literary form. So we're asking this group today to review those previously required standardizations for cataloging as part of our migration to BiblioCore. So currently, we require the audience fixed field on all bibliographic records. So in PowerPack, the audience fixed field controls the target audience facet, and you'll see a screenshot of that on this slide. So in PowerPack, all audience values will display in that target audience facet. So you can see here in the screenshot, we have adult, juvenile, general, unknown or not specified, which are records for which this field is not completed, and then teen. So back during our migration to Polaris, the groups that we talked to, which included PASS and this group, felt that it could be difficult for end users to understand the differences between some of the options that exist in this field. So we decided back in 2018 that we would only use the following values when completing the audience field: juvenile, adolescent, adult, and general. And we were able to modify the Polaris backend to display adolescent as teen, thinking that was more like patron-friendly language. So at that time, we decided not to use the following values: preschool, primary, pre-adolescent, and specialized. The thought behind that being that it would be difficult or could be difficult for our patrons to understand the differences between juvenile, preschool, primary, pre-adolescent, adolescent, and so on. So we decided again to set guidance and rules for our catalogers that they would only use those 4 broader values when completing this field in the MARC record. So BiblioCore works differently when it comes to the audience field. BiblioCore on the back end will automatically map the different audience values in the MARC record to just three values: children, teen, and adults. And this is happening on the back end behind the scenes. So catalogers no longer need to change those more specific values specifically to juvenile for the facet to display what we want it to in BiblioCore. And I included a chart in your packet of how BiblioCore is mapping those values. Essentially, preschool, primary, pre-adolescent are all mapping to the children's value in the BiblioCore audience facet. So CCS is recommending that we continue to require the completion of the audience field, since that is controlling facet display in BiblioCore, but that we lift that requirement to only use the 4 values we're currently using to allow catalogers to use any value in the audience field. Again, because BiblioCore is automatically mapping these values the way we're currently manually mapping them in PowerPack, it's sort of extra work to continue to require catalogers to make changes that the software now handles. So I'm going to stop my share and open it up to any discussion. And catalogers, I'm specifically looking for your feedback here as well for the group. I think that's really helpful context for everyone.
I think it's really great that BiblioCore can map to the broader audience, especially like for the children's stuff, because I know, I mean, again, as a cataloger, it was always, in OCLC records, different libraries make different decisions, and it's one of those things that you always had to remember to take a look at. And did we use that one? Did we not use that one? So as a cataloger, I love that BiblioCore can map to the broader audience, even though the data can be more specific. I think that'll be really helpful and less confusing.
Any other questions, concerns, feedback? This is not the one that's going to get us riled up.
Sounds like a win-win to me. I don't see any downside. So it looks like if there's no other discussion or questions, if there is anyone want to make a motion based on the CCS recommendation then, or a motion on what they think?
I'll make a motion that we continue to require completion of the audience field and that catalogers may choose any value.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Kate made the motion and Georgia seconded.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do roll call. Kate?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
And, oh, Anastasia's not here. Mark?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yep.
Sam?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
And Jessica?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, then
Deborah,
I will jump.
can I ask a kind of rollout type question for that?
Yeah.
So is this something that CCS will just announce and I probably should have, Jessica, we probably should have talked about this when we met. Should we then be considering retroactively going back and changing things? Or is it just changing things moving for changing by meaning using
Yeah.
the different audience types?
Yeah, CCS doesn't have any plans to do any retro work here. We'll just leave juvenile as the primary audience value for youth materials. Moving forward, though, libraries can, based on this approval, stop changing those more specific youth values to juvenile.
All right.
Yeah. Unless the group, Carly, Jessica, do you have any opinions on that?
I don't think we need to go back and change stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we did already give the CAM group just a heads up that the group would be talking about this, so it should be It should be on their radar.
It's more just one less thing that they'll have to look at, and so it's eliminating something, no cleanup needed. Okay, that as a non-cataloger, like that makes sense to me, but I just wanted to make sure that that is what, yeah, thank you.
No, that's perfect. That's good clarification. So we'll announce that to the CATS listserv and put it in the newsletter for this week. Just one less thing for everyone to do. Okay, then I will just jump right in then to sort of the second part of this agenda item, which is literary form. So the literary form facet in PowerPack is populated by the literary form fixed field in the MARC record. And this facet in PowerPack only applies to print materials, not AV materials. So our current cataloging rules for this field is that for print materials, libraries will assign at minimum a literary form value of either 0, which is not fiction, or 1, which is fiction. There are also more specific options within this field. So our guidelines say that libraries can use the more specific values like short stories or poetry if they would like to. But we do require that instead of using the more specific novels value, that libraries use fiction instead. And the reasoning behind this was that that the groups felt that splitting out novels and fiction could be confusing to users, since novels are fiction, would it sort of be splitting results within that facet? So again, the guidance laid out at the time of our migration to Polaris was that instead of novels, we use fiction. So in BiblioCore, again, mapping for the similar field works a little bit different than PowerPack. In BiblioCore, the sort of corresponding facet is called the content facet. And this facet, again, breaks materials out into nonfiction and fiction. And the mapping for BiblioCore incorporates more than just the literary form fixed field. It's also looking at additional bib and item data, including call numbers, subject and genre headings, and so on. And I put a link in the packet to sort of like the full mapping, which gets a little bit complicated. And in BiblioCore, this facet applies to both print and AV materials. So it is covering more than that facet in PowerPack does. You'll notice in the screenshot that I have here that there is also an undetermined value here, and that typically is applying to things like music, which is like neither fiction or nonfiction, your equipment, your library of things materials, things like games, which again don't have a corresponding fiction or nonfiction value. So the CCS recommendation here is that we, again, continue to require completion of the literary form field because, again, it is used for facet mapping, but we can lift that requirement that novels are coded as fiction since that mapping to fiction and nonfiction is happening behind the scenes on the BiblioCore end. So I'm going to stop my share and open it up to questions or any discussion.
Just to follow up with Kate's point at the end of the last one, this again would be staff would move forward with using it, but
Yes.
would not need any retro cleanup. Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions, concerns, comments for Deborah or for the group? Anything from any of our catalogers?
Uncontroversial, it seems. Hopefully.
I'll make a motion to continuing to require completion of the literary form field while ceasing the requirement that novels be coded as fiction.
Do we have a second for our motion?
I'll second.
All right.
All right.
Motioned by Kate, seconded by Mark, and then a roll call vote.
Kate,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Georgia,
Yes.
and Jessica.
Yes.
Perfect. Motion carries. So again, we'll go ahead and announce the change in requirements to the catalogers list and one less thing for the group to have to change.
All right, thank you. The next item is the discontinuation of the PAC override code.
All right, let me go back to my share here. Okay, so a little bit of background. When CCS migrated to Polaris back in 2018, libraries were offered the option to enable a PAC override code. Essentially, how this works is that when logging into the catalog, staff can enter in the override code along with a patron's barcode to log into the catalog as that patron. So this allowed staff to access the patron's account without needing their individual password, and this was meant to be a tool, to support patron account troubleshooting. BiblioCore works a little bit differently. In BiblioCore, there is like a staff takeover function, and this function allows staff who have specific permissions, that user management permission group, to take over a patron's account in BiblioCore while that staff member is logged in with their individual BiblioCore account. So our governing board policy currently states that CCS and library staff that have access to patron data have to access the database with their individual logins and passwords. So really, this PAC override code does not align with this governing board policy because it is a shared password that all staff at a given library use. It's sort of override. It's not in line with this policy that says any staff member accessing patron data has to be using an individual login and password versus a shared one. So CCS is planning to discontinue the use of PAC override codes with the move to BiblioCore. Again, to make us back in alignment with that governing board policy. So what we're really asking this group for is feedback on what you feel like an appropriate timeline for disabling or discontinuing the use of this setting is, knowing that some libraries may be using this setting frequently to support patron troubleshooting. What does the group feel is a realistic timeline for discontinuing this practice?
Do we know how many libraries are using it? Because I'll be honest, we are not at Northbrook, and everyone's like, that's a thing? Like, none of us remembered.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say the same thing.
We use it.
Okay.
Okay. I've used it myself. Use it for placing holds.
We use it constantly as well and are kind of devastated to not be able to going forward because none of our patrons ever know their passwords.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if this feature is built into staff user accounts in BiblioCommons, that actually makes immensely more sense because it's a standard password, and if I stop working here today, I could log in as anyone I wanted to.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I think it's a great idea, but we definitely do use it.
Here at Evanston, we've been using BiblioCommons and the staff takeover. It's so easy.
So
yeah, the difference I would say in BiblioCore is that not everyone has the permission to take over a staff account. I don't know. I think every library has had a different approach to how they've assigned permissions in BiblioCore. But for libraries like Winnetka and Fox River Valley, where likely most of your staff have access or know the PAC override code, not all of those staff may have the staff takeover permission in BiblioCore, though you certainly could assign it to staff if you wanted to.
So knowing that Winnetka and Fox River Valley both use it heavily, when are you guys going live?
I think we're currently going live August.
We've already gone live in May, so we've already lost access to that and had planned on asking CCS, how do we do the equivalent of this in BiblioCore? Because it's killing us right now. Yeah.
Okay. Because it seems to me that we should see whichever libraries have it and which are using it actively, and whichever
Right.
one has the latest date, do it right after they go live. To me,
Yes.
makes the most sense.
I
So
was
at
gonna
this
say,
time, I believe our last library goes live in October. So our recommendation, or the latest we recommend disabling it would be end of October.
And I will say that that is us at Northbrook because we're going to BiblioWeb and we're doing them at the same time and we don't use it. So if someone is going, if we're like the latest and everyone else is going live by August, that will not harm us in any way.
would it make sense, or I don't know what the time of disabling this login is. Would it make sense that when you go live, it becomes disabled? So it's more of a rolling. That way the libraries that are done, that is taken off the plate, and those who are still using, PowerPack as their main interface still has that access. I don't know what the
Yeah,
time
if it's an
frame is.
individual permission or a global.
It is individual by library. So we could disable one by one. Um, I mean, that's something we could do. So Sam, it sounds like your staff aren't necessarily going to PowerPack now to use the pack override code.
Correct.
You know, okay.
Yeah, we're not going backwards in order to do that. Yeah.
So what if we did something like for all libraries currently live on BiblioCore, we would disable this by July 15th. And then for all libraries still to launch BiblioCore, we would disable within 1 month following your launch.
That seems reasonable. Is that a reasonable workload for CCS, or is it a pain in the neck to be doing updates individually?
No, it's very, very essentially we just go through and
Okay.
uncheck a button. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's pretty
okay.
easy
All
to
right.
turn
Just
off.
making sure that we're not like
Yeah.
quadrupling your workload.
No, it's super simple. Mark,
Great.
does that seem reasonable knowing that you're not live on BiblioCore yet, if we kind of give you a month wiggle room following your launch date?
I think that sounds fine. Yeah.
Okay. As long as we're communicating this with libraries specifically, this is really good feedback. That's helpful. So I like the idea of not waiting until October for everyone, knowing Sam, like you've already sort of stopped using this with your move to BiblioCore. Okay. Perfect. There's no action associated with this. We were just really looking for feedback from the group on what seemed reasonable in terms of a timeline for everyone. So that's really helpful. We'll plan again to put out a communication saying we're going to disable it by July 15th or mid-July for those libraries already live, and then 1 month following a library's launch for those that are yet to move to the new tool. And Kate, like we could probably disable yours at any time since you don't use it. So
Feel free
know,
to add us into the group and
There's gonna
disable
be
it
one
when you've already
legacy
gone
staff
live.
member that's been using it all along, They're gonna be like, what?
I know,
Yeah.
but I don't think we have it set up. Yeah, but we'll hear about it and be like, well, it's okay.
Yeah, I do feel like there was some like staff turnover that like people just forgot that this existed, except for the libraries that really heavily or
And
actively used it.
I can guarantee you, because I looked back at our Polaris manual, we never rolled this out to staff. So we, I think, never set it up, but it's possible that someone from another library might. Anyway,
remember.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Then I have what I need for this agenda item. So I think we're ready, Leslie, to move on to the next one.
All right, so the last item is non-integrated e-content record guidance.
So this is a bit of a hefty agenda item. So I'm glad that we still have plenty of time left in our meeting to have a really good discussion on this. And I've got Molly S. From CCS here as well to kind of listen in on all the feedback that the group shares. So I'm going to do my last screen share here. Okay. So I really want to start out by going over again how e-content works in Polaris, how e-content works in BiblioCore, and then opening it up to discussion on how we might need to change some of our workflows to accommodate the switch. So please stop me at any time if you have questions. I want to make sure that we have a really good understanding of how e-content works before we move into that sort of discussion piece. So in Polaris, there are two kinds of e-content, and we call them integrated and non-integrated e-content. So like I said, BiblioCore manages e-content very differently from PowerPack. So as part of the move to BiblioCore, we really need to figure out how to manage e-content moving forward. So we're looking for some feedback from this group, specifically on how to manage records in the short term until we do some further user research in the next fiscal year. So, integrated e-content. Integrated e-content is automatically imported into the system through the Polaris API. And when I say automatically imported, that's the MARC records for titles libraries own, as well as items associated for each library. With integrated e-content, users can search for, check out, and place holds directly through the catalog. So they don't need to go, to Libby or Cloud Library apps. They can actually do the same actions right from the catalog. Checkouts and holds for integrated e-content are synced back to Polaris. So they're synced to the Polaris user account, and things like checkouts are added to the user's reading history in Polaris as well. So we have a screenshot here on the screen of Private by James Patterson. This is a screenshot from BiblioCore, and we can see that green checkout button for this title, meaning again, a patron could click this checkout button and the item would be checked out to their account. Next time they logged into their Libby app, they would see it in their list of checkouts. Non-integrated e-content records are manually loaded into Polaris by CCS, for the most part, or in some scenarios, members. Records appear in catalog search results and include a link that pushes the patron out to the vendor's platform to access the materials. Well, this is like not a good example here. But you can see here, this is how a non-integrated e-content record looks like. There's no green checkout button, but there is a link instead that the user clicks, which redirects them to the vendor's website. Current integrated e-content vendors are Cloud Library and Overdrive. Access 360 or Boundless also used to be an integrated e-content vendor, but with the dissolution of Baker and Taylor, they've dropped off the list. So we've only got two right now. Again, Cloud Library and Overdrive. There are a lot of non-integrated e-content vendors that we have set up in Polaris, and we have really two ways of setting up non-integrated e-content vendors. One way is individual title records for content available through that vendor. Example of vendors set up this way include Flipster, Hoopla, Canopy, LinkedIn Learning, Commons Plus, Gale Virtual, Reference Library, and more. So for these non-integrated vendors, we have records in the database for each piece of content available through that vendor. So as you can imagine, it's kind of time intensive to maintain these as they have to be loaded by staff and deleted when the title or content is no longer available through that vendor. We also have database records set up as well. So these are single records for databases like Novelist, Consumer Checkbook, Consumer Reports, that again contain a link that redirects the patron to that database website. I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions. Okay, hearing none. So, e-content scoping in PowerPack works differently than BiblioCore. E-content scoping in PowerPack is managed through Polaris resource groups. And these resource groups are Polaris specific. They are not used by any other vendor that I know of. Resource groups control which e-content records patrons can see in PowerPack based on the patron's home library. So logged in patrons can see e-content records that are associated with their library in PowerPack, and users who are not logged into the catalog can will see e-content available to the library that they are searching. So again, if I'm an Algonquin patron and I'm logged into PowerPack at, let's say, Palatine's PowerPack site, I would see e-content available to Algonquin patrons. Now, if I was that Algonquin patron, I'm not logged in, but I'm searching Palatine's PowerPack, I would see e-content available to Palatine. So again, those resource groups are specific to the patron's home library. So resource groups are not impacted at all by scoping. So whether a library has their PowerPack limited to searching just their materials or scoped to searching all materials owned across CCS, the patron, if logged in, will still only see the e-content available to them. Oh, this is a horribly blurry screenshot here. So let's talk a little bit about e-content scoping in BiblioCore. And I know Mieko kind of reviewed this with us at previous meetings, but it's complicated, so good to have a refresher. E-content scoping in BiblioCore cannot use Polaris resource groups. So how it's working is that scoping is controlled by the link structure in the 856 field of a MARC record. So BiblioCore needs to have a unique identifier in each URL in a MARC record in order to scope that MARC record to the right library. So apologies for this blurry screenshot, but what the screenshot is showing is different 856 links for a LinkedIn Learning title, and each link has the library's name or code in it. So because the link contains information that tells BiblioCore which library owns or has access to this resource, BiblioCore can properly scope it to the right site in the catalog, in the new catalog. However, if there is no unique identifier in an 856 URL, the resource cannot be scoped. So BiblioCore does not know which library has access to that site, so it cannot scope it to specific libraries. So patrons might see these records and search results, but in most cases, they cannot access it or interact with it at all. So I'm going to open up BiblioCore and show you an example of how these records look. Okay, I'm going to open up. So I have Niles Main's BiblioCore site open, and I'm going to go ahead and do a search for an e-magazine. So I'm in BiblioCore. I'm going to search for this magazine. And here we can see in Niles's BiblioCore site that my search for Youngtimer and Retro returned 2 results. This first result here is a Libby e-magazine. So we can see here again, Overdrive/Libby is integrated with BiblioCore, so we can see this green checkout button that the patron can click in order to check out the material. Now, this second record we see here is a press reader record. And the patron can't really do anything with this record. Press reader records currently do not have links in the 856 that are specific to individual libraries. So here I can see this record in Niles Main's search results, but I can't do anything with it. And there's really nothing about this record that even tells the patron where to go to access it. If they're really savvy, they could open the full display and see that it's a press reader title. This would kind of require them to know what press reader is and how to access it. So again, I'm just going to pull up the MARC record quickly for the press reader record. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can see it better. So we can see here is this 856 link in this press reader record. The URL is pressreader.com/856 352H, which I believe is the identifier for the title, but there is nothing in the link that indicates that this title is owned by Niles Main. We do see a subfield Z that says access for Niles Main library cardholders, but BiblioCore cannot use subfield Z to map e-content to the right library. I'm going to show you one more example. I'm just going to pull up a LinkedIn Learning record so we can see, oh gosh, what's a title? I don't know what a title is for LinkedIn Learning. But anyway, this
by AWS.
AWS.
Mm-hmm. That should bring up something.
Okay, let's see. Da-da.
And then on the side, if you limit it
Yeah, I
to,
don't see it's pulling up anything, but that's okay. What happens with non-integrated e-content records that do have a unique URL in the 856 is we would see again a link right in the search results that if they clicked it would then shoot them over to the vendor's site where they could check out the title. So that is how it works when there is some sort of way in that link to distinguish that a specific library owns the title. So a couple of other differences between PowerPack and BiblioCore. In BiblioCore, e-content scoping is based on the library site the user is searching. So again, in PowerPack, when a patron was logged in, they only saw the e-content available to them, and that was controlled by those Polaris resource groups. But in BiblioCore, there's no recognition of the patron's library when they're logged into BiblioCore. Scoping is based entirely, again, on the site the patron is searching. When a patron is scoped to local holdings, using that facet on the left-hand side, the user is going to see just the e-content license to that library. However, when they are scoped to all partner libraries, they're going to see all e-content at all CCS locations. And so if you remember our discussion at our last meeting, that was one of the reasons why we're not recommending at this time to require libraries to default to the all member libraries scoping. Because when you do, the user is going to see every e-content record in the database, regardless of whether their library owns it or not. So moving forward, CCS recommends that we only load non-integrated e-content records for vendors who can provide MARC records that have unique library-specific URLs. We have been able to work with some vendors like Flipster to get a new set of records that do contain unique links for each library. But not all vendors may be able to provide libraries with those kinds of MARC records. So our recommendation is, again, that we only load non-integrated e-content for vendors that can give us records with unique URLs for each library. Oops, I see a comment in the chat. Oh, uh-oh. Sorry, Sam. I hope you get back.
Okay. Hopefully it stays stable now.
Okay. So really, we're looking to have a discussion with this group, and I put a bunch of discussion questions into your packet. One, are you comfortable with our recommendation to stop loading e-content records if they can't be scoped in BiblioCore? What do we do about the current non-integrated e-content records we have in the database without unique URLs? Should we be deleting them? And then some general questions just about like, what does your library think and how do you manage e-content records? What are your library's reasons for including or choosing not to include various records in the catalog? What information would be helpful for your library to decide whether it's useful or not to your library to have them in the catalog? And then I have some questions here about cleanup. We have a lot of e-content in the database with broken links. How should we coordinate cleanup? Does the group have suggestions for like ongoing monitoring, how we approach cleanup? And then questions of whether your staff is doing any internal management or review of e-content records, or if it has kind of been like a set it and forget it thing. So I'm going to stop my share. I know it was a lot of information and it's a lot of discussion questions, but invite anyone to kind of jump in on whatever caught your attention most. Kelly.
So if with the e-content that they can find in the catalog, ones that are linked, that you check it out, you still have to go to the app to properly check the book out. I
Right.
feel like that's creating confusion for our patrons because they'll call and say, I checked out an ebook, where is it? And then you sometimes have to play like a dozen questions to find out what were you using? Where did you check it out? And then, so it's like, it's not shortening anything if you still have to go to the app in question to access the e-material. I think it's just causing.
Kelly, I think we might have missed like the last part of your sentence on your
I was
end,
just
Frank.
saying, it seems to just be causing confusion for patrons because it's essentially a record that you can see, but you can't access fully there, since you still have to go to Libby or whichever Cloud Drive app to fully view the material.
And that's not something that will be rectified with any of the decisions we'll make or in here.
So I
Yeah,
guess
so for Cloud Library and Overdrive, again, you can check it out right from the catalog. Actually, I haven't tested. I don't know if you can read right in your browser. So yes, I think the patron still does have to go to the app, log into like download the app, log into the app, to be able to read the content they might have checked out in BiblioCore. But for the non-integrated e-content links, again, it will push them out to that vendor's website where they would have to maybe create an account, log in with an existing account, and so on in order to get to the thing.
Kelly, this is Kate. I have a clarifying question. It sounds like what you're saying is that any integrated and non-integrated e-content are both causing issues in the catalog, and that not issues in the catalog, but issues with patron confusion.
I would say integrated more than non-integrated, because with non-integrated, like Deborah says, you do get that push out link that's like you actually have to go somewhere else. Whereas with integrated, if you're not fully looking, it does sometimes look like it is a regular book, or they expect to be able to read the e-material in their web browser, and not everything is available that way.
That is true.
So some patrons are placing holds potentially on ebooks, thinking it's a regular book, and then wondering like, where's my hold?
Correct.
Okay.
So I do like the way that non-integrated appears. It's more obvious, like you will have to go through another step.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Get there.
Because I thought we were only talking about how do we want to handle non-integrated. Are we also talking about integrated? And I had a question on that.
If this is really just discussion. I mean, I do really want to get the group's thoughts on whether, again, like, does the group agree that we should stop loading e-content that can't be scoped? And what should we do about the stuff that can't be scoped? So I really am interested in that. But Molly S. is also here to hear your general thoughts and feedback on e-content, because it will inform our future user testing and research. So if you have other thoughts, we are 1,000% interested in hearing them.
Do we want to just tackle the non-integrated?
Maybe first, and then we can delve off into
then,
like anything we want to.
Can I ask a couple clarifying questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the integrated Cloud Library and Overdrive is going to continue to be integrated in BiblioCore. We're going to link, that's going to stay the same. Is that accurate?
For now, yes.
For now, yes. That's the way it is set up to operate.
Right, yes.
Okay. And then for the non-integrated, I didn't see Palace Project on there. And I guess I'm wondering when Boundless went away, is Palace Project something? And I know that that's like very, very granular, but because that's a statewide thing, and we probably have multiple, like we're not in it at Northbrook, but I imagine that we have CCS libraries in it. Like, how does that work? And then also, how does the statewide database package work where we all have access to it? And is that something that is non-integrated, or how does that work?
Palace Project currently does not offer MARC records. So
Okay.
we do not have any of
Do not have-
those
okay.
e-content records in the database.
Got it.
As for the statewide database package, CCS hasn't centrally like created or loaded any records
Okay.
for those resources for libraries. I believe, and this kind of ties into like cleanup, it's likely that several or some libraries have database records for some of the databases currently included in that package, whether they're directing to the right URL, etc. I'm not sure. Like we haven't reviewed those at this time.
Okay.
But we did
And
when we made the move to the statewide database pack, we didn't create records for everyone.
We did. Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful. Also, this seems like a non sequitur, but to me, they're connected. How many libraries are moving to BiblioWeb? Obviously, Evanston and Glenview are already there. I know we are, and I know that there's like a bunch of others, but I can never remember who, because I feel like that ties into this as well, because it's kind of shifting from using the catalog to using cards, which will then link in the catalog more directly with some of the stuff that's non-integrated.
I don't have an exact number. I believe
Is it like a
there are
third
like
of us?
I don't think
Not
I
quite
don't
that
think there's
many?
10. I think it's more like 5 to 7.
Okay.
Molly,
Last I heard was around 5.
Yeah,
5. Okay. Okay. So still a pretty small.
right.
Okay.
And
Because
so
I mean, for us, to me, it was like, well, we're going to be able to create separate cards for every single database that then can link and be able to offer more tags and more flexibility. So to me, the non-integrated database stuff is kind of and staff agree that that is not useful if it isn't scoped to our library, and B, definitely if there aren't MARC records, like we don't want sloppy stuff.
Yeah, and what Kate means by cards is, let me just share my screen really quick.
Everyone should just switch to BiblioWeb. Everyone just switch to BiblioWeb.
Libraries who also have BiblioWeb have the functionality to insert like a card into search results. So it's really similar if you use the PowerPack promotions feature, where like if you enter a certain search term or meet some other parameters, like a very like nice visually appealing card would appear in search results that could then push the user out to an additional tool. So, Kate, I think that was what you were referring to, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it'll also show up when you search the website. So like if a business person's like business resources search, I don't know, and then it would pull up LinkedIn Learning as well as other databases, like maybe it pulls up Morningstar, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, so like if you search for Excel, then you could have a little, card that popped up saying, interested in learning Microsoft tools, like check out LinkedIn Learning, and it would push the user out instead of having, again, maybe a lot of different records for each title.
Right.
It might be a more eye-grabbing promotional tool.
Yeah. Is there anyone who feels that they would not want to recommend not integrated content, that they still want CCS to load not integrated content? I know that's kind of the big question right here. Do we feel good with saying, since it can't be scoped, you can't link out to it, that it doesn't really serve a purpose in the catalog for patrons? Or is just the idea that it's there enough to keep it in?
I would be comfortable getting rid of it. We don't put any of our non-integrated resources in the catalog. I would be curious for the libraries who do, are they actually seeing usage of their databases based on that? I really don't think so. I did some searches because in Palatine we scoped all libraries. So like when Deborah did AWS, I'm like, why doesn't that come up? I think you were searching Niles, Maine, who
Just
didn't have
Niles. Oh,
LinkedIn
probably.
Learning. But if you do search some of those records, they're not very attractive. There's no icon. There's a bunch of information, even because we have LinkedIn Learning, and one of our members said, oh, I'm really excited to see LinkedIn Learning records in the catalog. And I'm thinking, but we don't scope to them. So he discovered them, and then he went to LinkedIn Learning himself, but he's a super user, so it may occasionally happen, but I don't think the number of people who are actually interacting with the catalog, searching for something very specific like AWS, and then finding those videos and going out to the database is worth all the extra work. A lot of the feedback I sometimes hear from patrons is they don't like having ebooks in the catalog. They just want books and videos. They don't want things that they have to log into something else to find.
Anyone feel strongly otherwise or want to add to Carly's point?
Our staff generally agreed with everything that Carly just said, although our adult services like collection manager said that having popular items display from Hoopla was useful, but that most of our patrons are going to Libby, so it isn't really, and most of our checkouts are coming from the Libby app, not through the catalog. So yeah, so Hoopla was the only one that might be, but they still didn't feel that it would be, that having all the record, like it would be select titles that could be potentially useful. But again, we, because we have BibliaWeb, would be able to make like a book list of popular, Hoopla titles and just link to that. Like we have other options now. So.
Sam, I know you're in a patron-facing role. Do you find when you're working with patrons that they're using maybe e-content records in the catalog, or
It's split, and those who do use the e-content records in the catalog, we have seen some of the same struggles that Kelly described. They think they're checking out a physical book. They're like, why isn't it telling me, or they think they're looking at a physical book record, sorry. So they're looking at it and they're like, why won't it tell me the call number? Where do I find this? And we're like, actually, that's an ebook you're looking at. Or they check it out and expect it to just be there automatically, and they don't understand the process of how to find it. And that just becomes a lengthier struggle for them. So those who use it, it's not always the most efficient. But I think most of our checkouts do still come from people going directly to Libby or Hoopla or whatever to check out from there. But it's a mixed bag. Yeah.
does anyone find these records useful as like a discovery tool? Like maybe patrons aren't interacting with, they're not checking it out or whatnot from the catalog, but the visual, like seeing it there, does it like promote the resource in any way? I'm hearing kind of no, because it's maybe confusing, but does anyone find otherwise that like, oh, it's helpful for staff or it's helpful for patrons to be aware that there's another resource out there?
I think for us, as for staff, it can be more helpful. But just anecdotally, when I help patrons and we see there's an ebook option, it's not really helping discovery for them because, I might say, we don't have a physical copy, but we have an ebook here. Do you want me to show you how to check that out? They're not interested. They want the physical book if they're looking in the catalog for it. I don't think I've ever found an ebook as a replacement for a physical book where the person wanted to do that, which is very unusual. I'm sure other libraries it's drastically different.
It's mixed. I've had people who occasionally have people who were happy to find out that like something was in Hoopla when I did a search. Um, but at the same time, it's not uncommon to say have someone come and ask for an ebook and ask for a book, and like I said, there are lots of e-copies available, and they'll say, no, I want a paper one. So.
And I think for the databases especially, it's so much easier to promote your databases other ways than have a link buried in your catalog somewhere that's hard to access and not very visually appealing. And then the problem with Hoopla too is if it's only being updated once a month, there's like new titles that aren't showing, like Calamity Club, which is a big popular book, is on Hoopla, but it's not in the catalog yet because it hasn't been updated because there's that lag. So usually we tell people to go directly to the app anyway.
I know in Overdrive, you can see the referral URLs, and by far, it's just people usually going directly from staying, in the app, or or linking from like a social media post we did or something like that, compared to linking from like the catalog or something like that.
I think we'd found with Overdrive, and this is a few years out of date, so may have changed, unlikely, that less than 2% of checkouts were coming from the API, which is PowerPack and like potentially like Communico apps. So a small percentage of your overall circulation.
That's still
I
accurate.
love that.
Still accurate.
Yeah, that seems very on point. I only work a couple hours a month on the service desk, so like I know that my data set in this is very small. What I have found is that it mostly is a like people learning that we have audiobooks, that seems to be like an awareness thing. I still agree that they don't want to check it out there. We take them over to Libby or Hoopla, but like that's the one that for some reason people are like, you have audio? Wait, audio I can listen to on my phone? Like that's the thing that I've experienced multiple times patrons saying, but the ebook piece isn't, like Carly was saying, like it just, and Sam, it just isn't
So
something people are really looking for.
it sounds like the general feeling is that most of us feel that it is not adding to the catalog, so not continuing loading, not integrated.
Yeah.
It's something I
And
think it sounds like we feel comfortable saying.
Yeah.
I'll clarify that. I think we'll continue to load non-integrated resources that can be scoped correctly. So things
Correct.
like
That's
LinkedIn
right.
Learning,
Yes.
Flipster. But for those that we cannot scope accurately, that don't present a link to the user out to the resource, it seems like this group is comfortable if we discontinue that practice, knowing again, there is no interaction with the record at all in BiblioCore for the end user. In terms of removing them, does this group have any issues with deletion of those records?
I would have an issue if they stayed in.
Okay, fair. Fair.
Right? So yeah, no, I think that's great.
Okay. I would like to touch on, I mean, it seems like this group seems pretty consistent, that they're not particularly useful in the catalog, aside from some like exceptions, or some really specific scenarios like with popular Hoopla titles. Um, I'm curious kind of what this group thinks about the third question I have in the packet, which like cleanup of current records that we have. I'm thinking like specifically about like there's a lot of like Gale virtual reference titles that have individual records in the database that like the library might not own it anymore. You might not have access. There's a lot of broken links that point to nothing, which I can imagine could be really frustrating for patrons. Does this group have any suggestions or feedback on how we might go about cleaning those up or issuing cleanup to individual libraries?
I would love to know if this would stack onto any other processes or cleanup that currently is in place. So like if we're already doing something that this could be added as part of a process that we already have in place, that to me makes the most sense because you're already like if you're already doing cleanup work, that makes the most sense.
I've also found over time and at different libraries, like for as a cataloger, these are the hardest things to like keep track of. You know, like nobody really seems to know exactly like who's in charge of that, or it's and they've been in there so long that really probably the person's not here anymore, and they're just so easy to lose track of and just not. I mean, short of having CCS run a report, like I have no idea, I just really, I don't see the way that this benefits patrons. I don't see the way that this provides good service. Like it just feels like the junk drawer that somebody's forgotten about kind of scenario.
Yeah, I would feel the same way about that. I mean, having myself entered some of those records probably decades ago, I don't, yeah, I have no idea what's still in there and what is valid and what isn't. I mean, it'd be nice if you could just like, do the kind of like tentatively delete it all and see if anyone complains.
Oh, I like that. That I like a lot. I also think that this pairs, oh, sorry, Deborah.
No, go ahead.
I also think that this pairs nicely with IPLAR. It could be that's because I've been working on that for the last couple of weeks, because one of the questions in IPLAR is how many databases do you have? How often are they being used? That having something that came out for libraries based on their like IPLAR reporting time to review, because they're already going through all of your databases and ideally looking at them, that might be a good way to review them. But I actually really, really love Mark's. Like, let's just delete it and see what happens. And then you can always add them back in. But I mean, I think to Molly's point, like not that many people are even looking at our most popular things, let alone these more esoteric ones. So.
Molly, do you have any questions for the group?
No, this has been very consistent with the user research that we've done to date. Patrons who are in the catalog are not looking for e-content records. They're not noticing e-content records, regardless of if they're integrated or not. The inclusion of them is not driving circulation in any of the other apps. Patrons who are looking for those records are going directly to the apps to find them. And everyone we interviewed ran into a record that they could see but not check out, and it got frustrating very quickly. There wasn't anybody who found what they were looking for. So if there's any information or data that anyone is specifically interested around how patrons interact with these records, like I'd be happy to take those requests. But I don't have any questions based on the discussion up to this point.
Does this necessitate a larger discussion of whether we as a consortium decide that we are not going to spend CCS and staff time loading in e-content records that are not driving anything, right? Like Jessica and I talk about this, like we have a finite amount of resources available to us. Staff time is the most valuable thing we have. And are we using it in ways that are going to be most valuable for our libraries? Is this a good use of time? Or does it make more sense to say, we have made the decision that this is not serving our patrons and is taking staff away from time that they could be spent doing other things? I know people will have feelings about that, but I think it's worth having perhaps a discussion. Anything that we can do and we talk, I mean, this has come up at the last couple governing boards, like staff capacity is at max for most of us. So like, let's figure out ways to say, we don't need to do this anymore. Like not only delete the records, but we're not going to add these in because adding them in requires X amount of effort. Like I did a really quick calculation just on stopping the audience updating and the literary form. It will save us 83 hours a year. That's just assuming that you're spending 5 seconds per record. Like, I mean, that's like 2 weeks of work. So I guess that is, I know, a broader question than what you're asking, Deborah, but I think it's one that is worth looking at to say, is this an effective use of our time?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of where this discussion is going. That we really want to understand, is there a benefit to patrons to having these records in the catalog? So Molly referred to some user research she's already done. We have some potential user research projects coming up that could kind of confirm like what we found so far, hearing from this group, sort of across the board that these records aren't particularly useful to your patrons, or maybe there's just more effective ways to market these tools. I think this gives us a good foundation to kind of take a closer look at what we're doing now and bring this discussion into the next fiscal year of what should we do moving forward. So this has been extremely helpful for us to sort of hear your experience. Knowing though that I think that these thoughts maybe aren't shared by everyone in the consortia, so we really need to kind of approach this like really with a really thorough like project plan to evaluate this moving forward. So I think we have what we need here. The group is comfortable if we stop loading non-integrated e-content records that can't be scoped, and having CCS move forward with removing those from the database since they're not providing any additional value to patrons and they can't interact with them. And then CCS continuing to investigate whether these records should be in the catalog at all, and focusing some of our research in the coming fiscal year on that question.
And I would even add, based on what I heard from people, is that we would also be comfortable stopping adding in any non-integrated e-content, even if it is scoped, that we only add in currently integrated e-content, but non-integrated, we all seem fine with saying, we're not going to do that. But that's what I heard.
Yeah, and
I may have misheard.
No, I think that's what I heard too. I think then that may need to go up higher to like executive committee or governing board before we make a change like that major to the services that we offer. But again, extremely helpful to kind of hear what this group thinks here. Any last thoughts about e-content in the catalog?
I just want to really quickly before we adjourn say thank you, Deborah. You always prepare things so thoroughly and it makes it so easy for us. Like Jessica and I met, we asked for feedback from other people, and you gave us enough time to do that so that we could come and have a thoughtful conversation. And I just always appreciate how thorough, how well you present it so that it's easy, especially for non-catalogers for certain things. And so thank you for having such a great packet and for always helping us feel informed to make good decisions for everyone.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that.
And thank you to the committee. I know this is our last meeting for the year. So thank you everyone for coming prepared to have these thoughtful conversations. I know this is my first time on database management, so I don't know if our lift was more than normal because of the change than there, but it was nice to have some meat and substance to all of our meetings. So thank you all. And I know the committee announcements will be coming out shortly, I believe. So there might be some faces that can help continue these conversations with database management next year. So
yes, I will echo that. Thank you everyone so much for all the work you've done on the committee so far. We are finalizing the rosters for the next fiscal year. So if you resubmitted your name for this committee or another group, you should be hearing from CCS within the next week or two to confirm whether or not you've been slotted onto the group. But thank you again. This really has been a meaty year for database management. We've had some quieter years leading up to it, but with the change to BiblioCore, we asked you to learn a lot of new things and consider a lot of changes. So we really appreciate all the time you took and the thought and the care to bring your library's perspective to our discussions. So shout out and big applause for everyone in the group. We appreciate it.
All right. If we have no other items, we can go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 11:27.
It's great. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.
Bye.